Election spending has gotten out of hand. Across the presidential, Senate, and congressional races, projected spending across both parties is expected to exceed $10 billion. To put that number into perspective, Germany's last parliamentary election only cost $109.6 million. And my message to Germany and all the other nations that aren't spending billions on their elections is get your money up, you broke. To some people, spending 100 times more on our elections than other developed countries is a clear sign of corruption. To me, I say it's a clear sign that we take politics 100 times more seriously. I knew our politicians were getting money, but I had no idea they were balling this hard. It's because they always pretend to be so humble when they're campaigning. If the Gates Foundation donates a couple million to one of your super PACs, you should treat yourself by getting out an iced out chain with the Windows logo on it. When it comes to who's donating to which candidate, it's always so hush hush. I think our political leaders should have to wear badges that represent their top 10 campaign contributors. Our soldiers wear service ribbons and medals on their chests to represent their accomplishments on the field of battle. Our elected officials should have some kind of insignia that represent their accomplishments on the field of fundraising. If the Sackler family is a top donor, you should wear a bedazzled Oxycontin pin. If Exxon is a top contributor, you should get the Black Tar Sands Cross. And it doesn't have to be all evil companies to get these badges and medals. If the alternative energy industry is a top contributor, you can get the Green Energy Star. Why stop at badges on your chest? There's so much we can do with this. Whoever gets the most money from AIPAC should get to wear a gold yarmulke. I think that would be really fun. If Moderna is a top campaign contributor, you should get a chain with an iced out COVID-19 spinner. If George Soros is your top donor, you should get a Soros face tat on your neck. It's so easy for politicians to lie, and this would really help let the people know where they actually stand. If someone is running for office and they're promising that they're going to end the war and bring back the troops, but they're wearing the Lockheed Martin Medal of Honor, I think we all know what's going to actually happen here. Political campaigns work tirelessly to secure as much funding as possible, and it can't be easy to secure millions of dollars from the oil and gas industry or billionaires like George Soros. So why hide the fact that these people are donating their money to your cause? Just wear it on your chest for everyone to see. On a much deeper level, I think it's incredibly unfair that politicians get to sell themselves off to the highest bidder, but Americans have to vote for free. These super PACs and billionaires give all this money to politicians to run ads to convince Americans to vote for them. I say cut out the middleman and just give the money directly to the people. At every level of the government, we have literal bozos running for office, and I think we should have to receive financial compensation to vote for these clowns. I'm tired of the politicians and the 1% monopolizing and hoarding all the wealth that comes from corruption. It's time we let everyday Americans get a taste of the action. Just the other day, I got a text from Kamala Harris begging for my money and my vote. Don't text me asking me for money. Text me with stock tips. You give me the heads up on Nancy's next trade and I will give you my vote. If defense contractors want me to vote for some shill that's gonna co-sign their next forever war, you should give me some Raytheon stock. If you want my tax dollars to fund the next quagmire in the Middle East, I demand some equity. You want to build a new pipeline? That's fine. Give me some free gas. Let's make a deal. There should be an online platform where I can go and get bribes for my vote, like a Facebook marketplace that connects billionaires and super PACs with everyday Americans. Our current system is just so inefficient. If some rich prick wants to get a bill passed, he has to drop like $100K to buy a bunch of copies of some congressman's god-awful book, and then he has to drop another $900K on billboards and commercials that may or may not convince me to vote for their dog water candidate. Instead of wasting the money on ads, hand over the rest of that money out to working class Americans. You want the black vote? Instead of paying for Meg Thee Stallion to open at your rally, just take that money and write some checks directly to members of the black community. That's so much better than making a bunch of promises and then disappearing until the next election cycle. These super PACs are out here paying influencers to hype their candidates. How do I know they're doing this? They offered to pay me. Here is an email they sent asking me to show for their campaign. If you see a C-list influencer or above endorsing a presidential candidate, just know they're probably getting paid to make that video. And you should be mad about this because instead of wasting their money on influencers, they should be paying you directly. Unfortunately, when it comes to corruption in this country, the train has left the station and there's no turning back. It's time for everyday working class Americans to stand up and demand access to the bribes and kickbacks that our politicians have been hoarding. In a letter to the House Judiciary Committee, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg admitted that the Biden-Harris campaign pressured Meta to censor COVID-19 content that they deemed as misinformation and suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story. Nothing makes my blood boil like hearing that the Biden laptop story was suppressed. Everyone knows the Biden administration didn't want Hunter's laptop being leaked because they were jealous of how cool Hunter was. Hunter Biden loves guns, prostitutes, and most importantly, he loves crack. He's America's sweetheart. And if you don't believe that that's true, both of these men slept with sex workers, but only one of these men got sued by their former fling. Hunter has the sauce. And the Biden campaign knew that if America learned more about Hunter's pistol-toting, crack-smoking adventures, they would demand that Joe Biden step down so his son can take his rightful place as the presidential nominee for the Democratic Party. Listen, I can sit here and be outraged at all of this and talk about how in a perfect world, the government would never try to interfere in public discourse and bury news stories that make it look bad. But we don't live in a perfect world, so what's the point of being naive? If the government wants to force Meta to censor content, why not start by censoring people who sell drop shipping courses and post videos on fake private jets and rented Lamborghinis? How is pretending to be rich not classified as misinformation? In fact, pretending to be rich on IG is so egregious, it should be considered a form of fraud that can be prosecuted as a felony. Here's the thing. I've always found posts deemed as COVID misinformation to be wildly entertaining. Nicki Minaj tweeting about how her cousins wouldn't get the vaccine because his friend's balls got swollen? Hilarious. I would rather have someone jab me in the urethra with a COVID shot than listen to some 22-year-old misinterpret a Marcus Aurelius quote in a rented Lamborghini. Dating podcasts also need to be subject to harsh censorship. No one needs another single girl in her 20s dating in the big city podcast. It's all the same. You meet a guy online, he's kind of sweet, but you aren't that into him, so you dump him. Or you meet a guy, he's kind of a boy. You end up in a situationship. He screws you over, and now you're online complaining about how all men ain't. These podcasts aren't unique or interesting. They all land on a spectrum of somewhere in between a Wish.com Sex in the City or a Temu Caller Daddy. And fellas, if you want to lose brain cells real quick, tune into one of those alpha male podcasts where it's just two tradcon guys and a gaggle of OF chicks. Week after week, you get to see a couple male conservatards and a bunch of C-list OF chicks rehash whether or not body count matters. Every episode can be summarized as follows. An OF chick goes, I want to date a high-value man who makes $1 bazillion. And the host goes, no, you can't. You're a whore. End scene. The funny thing about these shows is they act like they're all anti-OnlyFans, but at the end of the day, all they're doing is giving these girls tons of free promo, and the show just ends up being a marketing tool for these OF girls. And last but not least, Meta needs to start shadow banning all prank videos. All I'm gonna say is that if a stranger pulls up to you and whispers some gibberish in your ear, that should be considered assault, and you should be allowed to defend yourself using lethal force. I want to go on the record and say that I am against censorship on social media, but the government is going to pressure social media platforms to censor content. At least have the decency to pressure these companies to censor the content that's giving our society brain rot. I'm Cyrus Naderpour, and this has been the Cyrus News Network. If you like what you see and want to support the channel, please like, subscribe, and share. If you want even more content, follow me on IG and TikTok at The Cyrus Show. And you can also check out my other podcast, The Franklin Cyrus Pod. The Cyrus News Network. We're not the fake news you need. We're the fake news you deserve.